Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back in time, not into the chaos of a battlefield or the intrigue of a royal court, but into a place of supposed tranquility, a medieval monastery. Picture it now. You're surrounded by towering stone walls. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax and old incense. And your entire life is governed by the ringing of bells. It's a world of profound peace, of quiet contemplation, and of a routine so rigid it makes your modern 9 to 5 look like a spontaneous holiday. It's a life dedicated to prayer, work, and silence. But what happens when that silence is broken? Not by a declaration of war, but by a cough. What happens when an enemy you can't see, can't fight, and can't pray away slips through the gates and begins to stalk the cloisters? Tonight's story is about how one such community, a brotherhood sworn to God, handled a terrifying internal outbreak. And let's be honest, in their shoes, you probably wouldn't have made it. Forget the disease for a second. The 3 a.m. wake-up call for prayers alone would have been a killer. No coffee. No scrolling through your phone. Just cold stone floors and Latin chants. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet and simple way to support the channel. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always a little fascinating to see our community of history lovers spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you're aware of is the cold. It's a deep, penetrating cold that seems to seep up from the very stone of the earth. Through your thin mattress stuffed with straw, and into your bones. It's a familiar cold. The same one that has greeted you every morning for the last 7 years. Ever since you came to the Abbey of St. Rigbertus, there is no sound. Not yet. Only the profound, waiting silence of the dormitory, punctuated by the soft, rhythmic breathing of your 50 brothers sleeping in the long, dark hall. You lie perfectly still, your eyes closed, trying to hold on to the last fading wisps of a dream. But you know it's no use. Any moment now. Clack, 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 clack. There it is. Not a bell. Not yet. That would be too gentle. Too easy to ignore. This is the sound of the cymbalum. A simple wooden board struck with a mallet. Carried by the monastic watchman making his way down the center of the dormitory. The sharp, dry sound is designed to cut through sleep. A percussive and non-negotiable summons. It is the sound of God calling you to your first duty of the day. It is 3 hours past midnight. You swing your legs over the side of the cot, and your bare feet meet the stone floor. The shock of it is immediate. A jolt that travels up your spine and clears the last vestiges of sleep from your mind. You don't dawdle. No one does. You pull on your heavy, undyed wool tunic, the rough fabric of familiar chafe against your skin. Over it goes the scapular, a long piece of cloth hanging front and back. And finally, the heavy cowl, the uniform of your new life, all around you. The dark shapes of your brothers are doing the same. A silent, synchronized ritual performed in near total darkness. No words are spoken. Silence is the default state here, especially during the Great Silence, which lasts from the evening's final prayer until the first prayer of the new morning. You file out of the dormitory, a slow-moving river of dark wool, your wooden sandals clicking softly on the worn stone. The air in the cloister is even colder than in the dormitory. It's a damp, heavy cold, carrying the smell of wet earth and distant rain. Above, through the open arches of the walkway, the sky is a blanket of impenetrable black. The stars obscured by clouds. You follow the brother in front of you, your hands tucked into the opposite sleeves of your habit for warmth, your head bowed, This is the first journey of the day. From the world of sleep to the world of prayer, you enter the Abbey Church, and the atmosphere changes instantly. Here, the air is warmer, thick with the lingering scent of yesterday's incense and the smell of hundreds of beeswax candles. The only light comes from the great altar candle and a few smaller tapers scattered around, their flames casting long, dancing shadows that make the carved saints on the pillars seem to writhe and sway. You find your designated place in the choir stalls. The dark, polished wood smooth and cool beneath your hands. You stand and wait. The abbot, a man whose face you rarely see, unobscured by shadow, takes his place. He is a silhouette against the altar's glow. At his signal, a single, resonant note is sung by the cantor, Brother Thomas. Thomas has a voice that seems impossibly pure, a gift that everyone agrees is truly from God. And then, you begin. The first canonical hour of the day is matins, the night office. Your voice joins with 50 others, a wave of sound that fills the vast, dark space of the church. The Gregorian chant is not music in the way you once knew it. It is sung prayer. The melodies are ancient, the Latin words rolling off your tongue from memory. You've sung these same psalms so many times that they are a part of you, as natural as breathing. Damen, labia me apries. You begin. Lord, you will open my lips. And for the next hour and a half, that is what you do. You sing of praise, of lament, of hope, of divine judgment. The words and melodies wash over you, through you. Sometimes, your mind wanders. You think of the ache in your lower back, of the persistent draft coming from the north transept, of the strange dream you were having before the cymbalum woke you. But you always come back to the chant. It is the anchor of your life. It is the rhythm that holds everything together. Following matins is lauds, the dawn prayer. As the very first hint of gray light begins to filter through the high windows of the clerestory, the world outside is waking, and so your prayers shift to greet the new day, to praise the creation and the resurrection. The light grows, slowly, almost imperceptibly, turning the gray stone from charcoal to slate to dove. By the time the final Amen echoes into the rafters, the day has officially begun. You file out of the church in the same silent order you entered. The great silence is over, but a general habit of quietude remains. You move back to the dormitory to collect your work tools. Your day is governed by the maxim of Saint Benedict, whose rule dictates every aspect of your life here. Ora et labora. Pray and work. You have prayed, now you will work. For you, work is in the scriptorium. You are a copyist, a humble but vital cog in the great machine of preserving knowledge. The scriptorium is on the second floor of the cloister's northern walk. Positioned to receive the best light of the day, you enter the long, narrow room. It smells of ink, parchment, and the faint, sweet scent of the glue used to bind books. You take your place at your designated desk, a simple, sloped wooden lectern. Before you is your current task, a copy of Pliny the Elder's Naturalis Historia. It's a monumental undertaking, a book filled with observations about the natural world. Some of it genius, some of it what you would privately call utter nonsense. Yesterday you were copying a section on remedies and made the mistake of reading about using crocodile dung as a potent form of sunblock. You had to stifle a laugh, which earned you a sharp glance from Brother Michael, the armarius, or librarian, who presides over the scriptorium with an eagle's eye and a disposition to match. You unroll the master copy in the fresh sheet of vellum you prepared yesterday. The vellum is a beautiful thing, creamy and smooth, scraped and treated for weeks until it is perfect. It is made from the skin of a calf, and you try not to think about that too much. You dip your quill a goose feather you sharpened yourself into the pot of ink. The ink is made from oak galls and iron salts, a recipe that has been used for centuries. It is black, permanent, and unforgiving. The work is slow, painstaking, and requires absolute concentration. You are not just writing words, you are drawing them. Each letter must be perfect, a faithful reproduction of the master copy. Your hand must be steady, your eye sharp, for the next 4 hours. The only sounds in the scriptorium are the soft scratch of quills on vellum, the occasional quiet cough, and the rustle of a page being turned. The light shifts as the sun climbs higher in the sky. You feel a familiar ache begin to build between your shoulder blades. Your fingers cramp, but you continue. This is your labor. This is your prayer. You are not just copying a book. You are fighting against the darkness of ignorance, against the decay of time. You are preserving a fragment of God's creation, one letter at a time. It's a common historical fact that monasteries like yours were the primary repositories of knowledge throughout the so-called Dark Ages, single-handedly saving much of Western literature and science from oblivion. What's less commonly known is the sheer physical toll it took. The eye strain, the back pain, the arthritis that would cripple the hands of men like you by the time they reached middle age. You glance over at Brother Paul. 2 desks down, he is an illuminator, a higher status job than yours. He doesn't just copy text, he adds the glorious, colorful illustrations in the margins. Today, he is working on a capital D, transforming it into a riot of golden leaves and mythical beasts. He works with a brush made of 3 squirrel hairs, leaning so close to the page that his nose nearly touches it. His work is sublime. It is also, incredibly expensive. The lapis lazulis he uses for his brilliant blues comes from the mountains of Afghanistan, a journey of thousands of miles and countless middlemen. The gold is beaten into sheets so thin they would disintegrate if you breathed on them too hard. It's a world of immense, quiet artistry, happening right here in this silent room, at the sound of the bell for terce. The 3rd hour. You all put down your quills, cap your ink pots, and file back to the church for the short 15-minute service. Then, it's back to the scriptorium. The rhythm is relentless. Pray, work. Pray, work. Midday brings the bell for sext. The 6th hour, followed by the main meal of the day. You are more than ready for it. You wash your hands at the lavatorium in the cloister, a large stone basin with running water cleverly piped in from a nearby spring. Then you proceed to the refectory. The refectory is a large hall, similar to the dormitory, with long wooden tables. You take your seat. No one speaks. The meal, like most things here, is a ritual as you eat. One of the younger brothers stands at a lectern and reads aloud from the lives of the saints. The reading is meant to nourish the soul as the food nourishes the body. Today's food is pottage, a thick stew of barley and whatever vegetables are in season from the monastery's extensive gardens. There is also a small loaf of dark, coarse bread, and a beaker of small beer. A watery, low-alcohol brew that is safer to drink than the local water. It's bland, but it's filling. This is the diet of a monk. Simple, unadorned, designed to quell the passions rather than excite them. You've had this same meal, or a variation of it, thousands of times. It's the original clean eating trend, just without the Instagram posts and the hefty price tag. It's meant to remind you that the body is a temporary vessel, and its appetites are a distraction from the true work of the soul. Sometimes, late at night, you still dream of the roasted chicken your mother used to make. You push the thought away. It is a form of temptation. As you eat your bland pottage, you listen to the story of St. Lawrence, who, while being roasted alive on a gridiron, famously quipped to his torturers, "I'm well done on this side. Turn me over." You've heard the story a dozen times, but it never fails to elicit a few quiet smiles. It's a strange sort of humor, the gallows humor of the devout. It feels necessary, a small pressure valve in a life of such intense regulation. After the meal, There is a designated rest period. Some of the older monks nap. You choose to walk in the cloister garden. The garden is the heart of the abbey. A perfect square of green surrounded by the covered walkways of the cloister. In the center is a well. The paths are lined with herbs lavender, rosemary, thyme, and their scent hangs in the warm afternoon air. This is a place of peace. You can hear the buzz of bees in the flower beds and the gentle cooing of doves who nest in the eaves of the roof. You walk slowly, your hands once again tucked into your sleeves, your mind quiet. You are not supposed to be idle. This time is for contemplation, for meditating on the morning's readings or the nature of God. But today, your mind is on the earth. You watch Brother Philip, the gardener, a man whose hands are permanently stained with dirt and whose face is weathered like an old oak tree. He moves among his plants with a quiet reverence, pulling a weed here, checking a leaf there. He is in his own way as much an artist as Brother Paul in the scriptorium. His vellum is the soil, his inks are the seeds in the rain, the bell for none. The 9th hour calls you from the garden back to the church for another short service. Then it's back to work. For you, this means another 3 hours in the scriptorium, your back aching, your eyes straining in the afternoon light. For other brothers, it means returning to the fields, the kitchens, the brewery, or the forge. The monastery is a self-sufficient world. It grows its own food, bakes its own bread, brews its own beer, and forges its own tools. Everyone has a role, a purpose. This is the beauty of the rule. It creates a society where everything and everyone has its place. A divinely ordered machine humming along in the middle of a chaotic world. Historians still debate the extent to which manual labor was performed by the choir monks themselves versus lay brothers or hired help in a monastery of this size and period. In your abbey, the division is clear. You and the other literate monks do the brain work, the copying, the studying, the choir duties. The heavier work in the fields and workshops is largely left to the lay brothers. Uneducated men who have committed to a monastic life without taking the full vows of a choir monk. It's a practical system, but it creates a subtle class distinction within these walls that are supposed to be a great equalizer. You see it in the way the lay brothers keep their eyes downcast when you pass, the way they eat at separate, lower tables in the refectory, as the sun begins to dip towards the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the abbey. The workday ends. The bell for vespers, the evening prayer, rings out. This service is longer, more melodic than the daytime prayers. It marks the end of labor and the transition back into a state of prayer and contemplation. The setting sun streams through the stained glass windows of the church, painting the stone pillars in jewel tones of ruby, sapphire, and emerald. The cantor's voice soars, and you feel the weariness of the day begin to lift from your shoulders, replaced by a sense of peace. After Vespers comes a short period of reading. You gather in the chapter house, a formal meeting room with stone benches along the walls. The abbot sits on a carved wooden throne. He delivers what you and your friends secretly call the team meeting from hell, a weekly address where he points out the community's failings, assigns penances, and discusses the business of the abbey. But on most days, like today, one of the brothers simply reads a chapter from the Rule of St. Benedict itself. You listen to the familiar words. A reminder of the vows you took: poverty, chastity, and obedience. You are reminded of the ideal you are all striving for, even as you all inevitably fall short. Then comes a light supper, usually just bread and beer, eaten in silence as the last of the light fades from the sky. And finally, you all return to the church one last time for Compline. The final prayer of the day. Compline is the most intimate and beautiful of all the services. The church is dark again, lit only by a few candles. The chants are quiet, somber, and reassuring. You pray for protection through the night, for peace, and for a quiet death. At the end of the service, the abbot sprinkles you all with holy water as you file out. The great silence begins again. You walk back to the dormitory. The day having come full circle, you remove your cowl and tunic, fold them neatly, and lie down on your straw mattress. The cold is already beginning to seep up from the stone. All around you, you hear the soft sounds of your brothers settling in for the night. You are tired. It's a deep, physical, and spiritual exhaustion. But it's a good tired. It's the weariness of a day spent in purpose, in rhythm, in service to something larger than yourself. Your life is a circle, a loop. From the cold floor in the pre-dawn darkness, to the chanting in the candlelit church, to the painstaking work in the scriptorium, to the bland meal in the refectory, and back to the cold floor of the dormitory. Every day is the same, and that is its comfort. That is its promise. The world outside the abbey walls is one of chaos, famine, war, and plague. But in here, there is order. In here, there is peace. In here, there is the rule. You close your eyes. The breathing of your 50 brothers is a gentle tide, pulling you towards sleep. The routine is a fortress, protecting you from the uncertainties of the world. Nothing can touch you here. The walls are high. The rule is strong, and the rhythm is eternal. You drift off, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow will be exactly the same as today. It is the last time in your life you will ever feel so certain. For another week. You are right. Another 7 perfect. Circular days. The cymbalum clacks in the pre-dawn blackness. The cold stone greets your feet. The chants rise and fall in the vast, echoing space of the church. In the scriptorium, you master the tricky curves of the letter S in your Pliny manuscript. Your back aches in the familiar way, and Brother Michael still glares at you if your quill scratches too loudly. The pottage is bland, the beer is thin, the silence is profound. The rhythm holds. The fortress stands. It's all so predictable, so blessedly, peacefully monotonous, that you don't notice the first tremor. It's not a sound you can hear, but a silence. During Vespers on the 8th day, you notice it. The voice of Brother Thomas, the cantor, is as pure and strong as ever as he leads the chant. But behind him, in the second row of stalls, there is a space. Brother Clement, a quiet, round-faced man who works in the abbey's mill, is not there. His absence is a missing note in the harmony, a small, dark gap in the fabric of the routine. You find yourself glancing at the empty space. It's unusual. Clement is not old, nor is he prone to sickness. He is as solid and reliable as the millstones he tends. Later, as you take your light supper of bread and water, you see Brother Philip, the gardener, whispering to Brother John, the cellarer. This, too, is unusual. Whispering is forbidden in the refectory. But the abbot's chair is empty tonight. He is dining with a guest in the prior. Who is presiding? Seems distracted. You can't hear their words, of course, but you can see the concern on Philip's face. The way his dirt-caked fingers nervously tap the wooden table. The guest, you know, is a wool merchant from Flanders. A man of some importance who is using the abbey's guest house as a stopover on his journey to the great market in the south. Hospitality to travelers is a sacred duty, one of the cornerstones of the Benedictine rule. Your abbey is famous for it. Important guests bring news of the outside world. They bring tithes. They bring prestige. Monasteries like this one were the 5-star hotels of their day, strategically placed along major trade and pilgrimage routes, offering a safe and sanctified place to rest. They were vital nodes in the network that connected the continent. But that connection, you will soon learn, is a double-edged sword. A road that brings wealth can also bring ruin. You see the merchant briefly the next morning as you cross the cloister. He's a large man, dressed in fine, brightly dyed clothes that look garish against the muted tones of the abbey. He is laughing loudly at something the abbot has said, his face florid and sweating despite the morning chill. He has a cough, a deep, wet, rattling cough that he makes little effort to stifle. You avert your eyes and walk faster. The affairs of the world are not your concern. Like your concern is Pliny, the glory of God, and the ache in your back. 2 days later, Brother Clement is still absent from his place in the choir. And now, Brother Simon, a lay brother who helps in the kitchens, is also missing from the refectory. The whispers become more frequent, exchanged in the laundry, in the garden, in the brief moments between prayer and work. The enforced silence of your life has made you all experts in nonverbal communication. A raised eyebrow, a slight downturn of the mouth, a shared glance across the scriptorium. These things speak volumes. The air is filled with a low hum of unspoken anxiety. It's like the feeling before a thunderstorm, a pressure in the atmosphere that you can't see but can feel on your skin. The official explanation, when it comes, is delivered by the prior during the morning chapter meeting. He explains that brothers Clement and Simon are suffering from an inflammation of the lungs, a common enough ailment in the damp and drafty stone buildings you call home. They are being cared for in the infirmary by Brother Anselm. He asks for your prayers for their swift recovery. He says it in a flat, business-like tone, as if announcing a change in the work schedule. But his eyes betray him. They dart around the room, never settling on any one person for more than a second. He is nervous. The team meeting from hell has a new, unlisted item on the agenda, and no one is taking minutes. You try to put it out of your mind. You focus on your work. You're copying a chapter on the astonishing variety of fish in the Red Sea. Pliny claims some of them glow in the dark. You wonder if this is true. You focus on the shape of the letters, the steady flow of ink from your quill. Ora et labora. Pray and work. The rhythm is the cure for all anxiety, but the rhythm is being disrupted. That afternoon, during the period of silent work, the sound comes. A single, hacking cough, distant but clear. From the direction of the infirmary wing, it's a raw, ugly sound. It is followed by another. And then a fit of them. A desperate, tearing sound that makes you flinch. Brother Michael, the librarian, looks up from his reading. His perpetual scowl deepened into a look of genuine concern. For a full minute, the only sound in the scriptorium is that awful, ragged coughing and the frantic scratching of 50 quills as you all pretend you hear nothing. The infirmary is a place you have only been to once. 7 years ago, when you first arrived as a novice and succumbed to a fever born of exhaustion and a radical change in diet. It is a long, narrow building, separate from the main cloister, with its own small chapel and garden. This is intentional. It's designed to keep the sick isolated from the healthy, to contain the miasmas and bad humors that were believed to cause disease. Brother Anselm, the infirmerer, is one of the oldest monks in the community. He is a small, wizened man who moves with a slow, deliberate shuffle. He has been in charge of the infirmary for 40 years. His knowledge is not from books, not like yours. It is practical, passed down from the infirmerer before him. A mix of herbal lore, rudimentary first aid, and a heavy dose of prayer, he believes. As Galen taught centuries ago, that all illness comes from an imbalance of the 4 humors blood: phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. A fever is an excess of blood. A cough is an excess of phlegm. The cure is to restore the balance. You know what is happening in there. Brother Anselm will be trying to bring down the fever with cool compresses soaked in vinegar and water. He will be trying to soothe the cough with a syrup made of honey and horehound, a bitter herb from his garden. He will be making the sick brothers drink foul-tasting concoctions of willow bark and chamomile to encourage rest. And if the fever gets too high, he will perform a phlebotomy. He will take out his small, sharp lancet, find a vein in the patient's arm, and drain a measure of blood into a brass bowl. Believing he is draining the sickness with it, his most trusted diagnostic tool. However, is the urine flask? It's an obscure detail of medieval life that seems bizarre now. But for Brother Anselm, uroscopy is a precise science. He will hold a glass flask of the patient's urine up to the light, studying its color, its clarity, its sediment. He has a chart, a complex wheel diagram that links dozens of different shades of urine from pale straw to deep, cloudy red to specific ailments in specific parts of the body. He might even sniff it, or, in extreme cases, taste it. To you, it seems like a strange form of tea leaf reading. To Anselm, it is the peak of medical technology. He is the original WebMD, a search engine of symptoms whose database is a combination of ancient Greek theory and 40 years of practical experience. But this time, the chart is failing him. You hear it from Brother Luke, whose turn it is to assist in the infirmary that week. Luke is young, barely 20, and his face is pale with a new kind of fear. He speaks in a hushed, rapid tone in a quiet corner of the warming room, a chamber with a large fireplace where the monks are allowed to congregate for warmth in winter. It's not like any lung fever I've ever seen, Luke whispers, his hands trembling slightly. Brother Clement. His skin is burning, but he shivers as if he's frozen. And there are swellings. Swellings, you ask, your own voice a whisper. Luke nods, his eyes wide. In his groin. And under his arm, they are hard and dark, almost black. Brother Anselm has never seen the like. He tried to lance one, thinking it was a boil, but only a thin, foul-smelling fluid came out. And the pain? The pain makes Clement scream. You feel a cold dread creep up your spine, a chill that has nothing to do with the drafty room. Swellings. Dark swellings. You have read of such things. Not in Pliny, but in other books, older histories, accounts of plagues in ancient times, of cities wiped out by a pestilence that came with fevers and black sores. But those were stories. Things that happened to other people, in other places, long ago. They couldn't happen here. Not in the fortress of St. Robertus. The wool merchant left 2 days ago, leaving behind a generous donation and, apparently, a far more sinister parting gift. You remember his rattling cough, his sweaty, florid face? A rumor, quiet and venomous, begins to snake its way through the abbey. It's no longer just a cough in the cloister, it's a sickness from the outside world, brought in by a guest. The irony is bitter. The sacred duty of hospitality has become a potential death sentence. The very rule that was meant to sanctify your community may have just condemned it. The abbot declares a triduum, 3 days of special prayer and fasting for the sick brothers. The mood in the church becomes heavier, more desperate. Your chanting of the Psalms is no longer a peaceful meditation. It is a desperate plea. You pray for mercy. You pray for healing. You pray for the rhythm to return. For the empty spaces in the choir stalls to be filled again. But the spaces do not fill, they multiply on the second day of the Triduum. Brother Philip, the gardener, does not appear for matins. The man whose hands were so full of life, who could coax beauty from the bare earth, has been struck down. You picture him in the infirmary, his weathered face now pale with fever, his strong body shivering under a thin wool blanket. That same afternoon, another voice goes silent, but this time it's a voice everyone notices immediately. During the midday prayer of Sext, the cantor's stall is empty. Brother Thomas, the golden-throated cantor, is gone. There is a moment of stunned silence when the chant is supposed to begin. The prior looks around in a panic, then gestures to old brother William, the subcantor. To start. William's voice is thin and reedy, a pale imitation of Thomas's soaring tenor. The chant falters, the harmony is lost. It feels broken. It sounds like defeat. The news spreads through the abbey with the speed of a fire in a dry field. Thomas is sick. Not just a minor illness, but the sickness. The one with the fever and the dark swellings. If it can take him young, strong, his voice a literal gift from God, it can take anyone. The carefully constructed wall of denial crumbles into dust. This is not a common lung fever. This is not something a honey and whorehound syrup can cure. This is something new, something terrible. You sit at your desk in the scriptorium, the words of Pliny blurring before your eyes. The quiet of the room is no longer peaceful. It is heavy, pregnant with fear. Every cough, every sneeze, every cleared throat from a fellow monk makes you jump. You look at the brothers around you, men you have lived and worked with for years. You look at their faces, their hands, their necks, searching for any sign of illness. Are his cheeks too flushed? Was that a shiver of cold or a tremor of fever? You have become a diagnostician of terror? You find yourself holding your breath when someone passes too close. The academic debate about how disease spreads is no longer academic. Brother Anselm may still preach about miasma, about bad air rising from the fens, but a new, terrifying idea is taking root in your mind. You remember the merchant's cough. You remember that Brother Clement, the first to fall ill, was delivering flour to the guest house kitchen the day the merchant arrived. You remember that Brother Simon worked in that kitchen. The connections are too clear to ignore. This sickness passes from person to person. It is not in the air, it is in the very breath and touch of your brothers. It is a contagion. The fortress has been breached. The enemy is not outside the walls, it is inside, sitting beside you in the choir, eating beside you in the refectory, sleeping beside you in the dormitory, the rhythm of your life. Once a source of comfort and peace, now feels like a trap. The bells that call you to prayer now summon you to gather with the infected. The shared cup of the Eucharist. The kiss of peace, these rituals of community have become instruments of potential death. That evening, at Compline, the final prayer of the day. The number of empty spaces in the choir stalls has grown to 8. The chanting, led by Brother William's wavering voice, is thin and weak. It sounds like the abbey itself is dying. As you lie on your cot in the cold darkness of the dormitory, you can no longer hear only the gentle, rhythmic breathing of your sleeping brothers. Now, the silence is punctuated by a new sound, the sound of a man trying to stifle a cough, so as not to cause alarm. Another brother groaning softly in his sleep, the sound of fear. You lie perfectly still, your eyes wide open in the dark, and you listen. You pray for the sound of the cymbalum, for the familiar clatter that will signal the start of a new day. A normal day. But you know, with a chilling certainty that settles deep in your soul, that there will be no more normal days. The shadow has fallen, and it is only the beginning. The darkness in the dormitory is no longer a peaceful blanket. It's a living thing, thick with menace. You lie on your back, your muscles rigid, listening. Every cough, every rustle of straw, every soft groan sends a jolt through your system. Sleep is a distant country you cannot reach. You are hyper-aware of the man in the cot to your left, Brother Francis, and the man to your right, Brother Matthew. You listen to their breathing, analyzing it, searching for any telltale rasp or shallow gasp. Are they breathing too quickly? Too slowly, the communal act of sleeping, once a symbol of your shared brotherhood, has become a terrifying vulnerability. You are all just breathing the same air, the same potentially poisoned air, when the cymbalum finally clacks its sharp summons through the hall. It's almost a relief. The waiting is over, but as you rise in the cold darkness, the familiar ritual feels twisted, grotesque. You pull on your habit. but instead of feeling like a uniform of God, it feels like a shroud. You file out into the cloister, and the usual silent. Orderly procession is gone. The line is ragged. Men keep their distance from each other. Their shoulders hunched, their heads down. You don't tuck your hands into your sleeves for warmth anymore. You keep them pressed against your sides. Trying to make yourself smaller, a less inviting target for the invisible enemy that walks among you. In the church, the reality of your situation is starkly illuminated by the flickering candlelight. There are now 12 empty spaces in the choir stalls, 12 missing voices from the morning chant. When Brother William begins lauds, his reedy voice cracks with the strain. The chant is thin, a ghost of its former self. The soaring harmonies that used to lift your soul to God now barely limp to the rafters. The words of the Psalms, words of praise and deliverance, feel like lies in your mouth. You sing, Miserere me. Deus, have mercy on me. O God. But the plea feels hollow, as if you are singing into a vast, empty void. The triduum of prayer and fasting is over, and it has failed, utterly. As you are leaving the church, the sound begins. A single bell from the main tower, but it's not ringing for a service. It's a slow, steady, solitary toll. Dong. 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 Each note hangs in the damp morning air, heavy and final. It's the death knell. Everyone freezes. The shuffling of sandals on stone ceases. Every face turns towards the bell tower. A sea of pale, upturned faces in the gray dawn light. There is no need to ask who it is for. Everyone knows. The sickness has claimed its first victim. Brother Clement, the miller, the solid, reliable man with the round face, is dead. The fortress has not just been breached, its defenders are beginning to fall. The reality of it hits you with the force of a physical blow. This is not a test. This is not a trial. This is an extermination. Panic, cold and sharp, begins to curdle the faith in your heart. Later that morning, the abbot calls an emergency meeting in the chapter house. He has not been seen for 2 days. Secluded in his quarters. Praying, and you now realize. Wrestling with a fear as great as any of yours. The rule of St. Benedict gives the abbot the authority of a father over his family. He is Christ's representative within the monastery walls. His word is law, his spiritual guidance absolute. You and your brothers look to him for strength, for answers, for reassurance. He enters the chapter house, and a collective gasp ripples through the room. The abbot, always a figure of robust, unshakable authority, looks like a man who has aged 10 years in 2 days. His face is gaunt. His eyes are bloodshot and ringed with dark circles. He walks with a stoop, as if carrying an immense weight. He sits on his carved throne and looks out at you. His children, his flock. My sons, he begins. His voice raspy, stripped of its usual resonance. God in his infinite wisdom has seen fit to test us, to test our faith, our devotion, our obedience. He sounds like he is trying to convince himself as much as you. This isn't a pep talk. It's a desperate incantation. He speaks of the book of Job, of righteous suffering. He calls this pestilence a holy fire, sent to burn away the pride and complacency that has crept into your community. He says that Brother Clement has been taken as a first tithe, a holy martyr whose death will earn grace for the rest of you. He calls for more prayer, stricter fasting. He announces that the abbey will undertake the 7 penitential psalms daily. In addition to the normal canonical hours, you listen to his words, and a part of you, the part that has been trained for years in obedience and belief, wants to accept them. But another part, a new, cynical part born of fear, rebels. A test, a holy fire. It feels like a slaughter. You look at the abbot on his throne and you don't see Christ's representative. You see a terrified old man, armed with useless platitudes against an unstoppable enemy. It's the ultimate divine performance review. And everyone is failing, including the management. The funeral for Brother Clement is held that afternoon. It is a grim, hurried affair that violates a dozen traditions. Normally, a deceased brother would be brought to the church, his body washed and dressed by his brethren, and a constant vigil of prayer would be held over him until burial. None of this happens. Clement's body, wrapped tightly in his own bed linens, is carried directly from the infirmary to the small cemetery behind the church by two terrified novices. They hold the makeshift stretcher at arm's length, their faces covered with cloth soaked in vinegar. You and the other monks stand at a distance, near the church door, not in the cemetery itself. The abbot recites the burial prayers quickly, his voice stumbling over the Latin. There is no final kiss of peace on the cold forehead of the deceased. There is no shoveling of earth by his brothers. The two novices lower the body into the pre-dug grave and quickly, almost frantically, push the dirt in. The whole thing is over in minutes. It is less a sacred rite of passage and more a fearful act of disposal. This obscure, panicked deviation from the burial rite is more terrifying than any sermon. It is a silent admission that you are all terrified of your own dead. The work of the abbey grinds to a halt. No one goes to the scriptorium. What is the point of copying Pliny's thoughts on the migratory patterns of storks when the man at the next desk could be dead tomorrow? The words of ancient philosophers seem absurdly trivial in the face of so much immediate, visceral horror. That crocodile dung you once found so amusing feels like a joke from a different lifetime. Who cares about preventing sunburn when your very blood is boiling? Instead of work, you pray. You spend hours and hours in the cold church, chanting, kneeling, prostrating yourselves until your knees are raw and your voice is hoarse. The sheer volume of prayer is staggering. You are throwing everything you have at the gates of heaven, begging for a response, and the response you get is silence, or worse than silence. The response is another toll of the death knell, and then another. Brother Simon, the lay brother from the kitchens, dies the next day. Then Brother Philip, the gardener, the man who seemed to be made of earth and sunshine, succumbs. His hands, which brought forth so much life, are now cold and still. The infirmary is no longer just an infirmary. It is a death house. It is full. And a second building, a small storage barn, has been commandeered to hold the overflowing sick. Brother Anselm is a wraith, moving between the two buildings. His face a mask of exhausted despair. His herbs are useless. His bleedings only seem to weaken the sick. His uroscopy charts are meaningless. The urine of the afflicted is dark, cloudy, and often tinged with blood the color of death, a color for which his chart has no cure. A new routine begins to assert itself, a dark parody of the old one. The ringing of the bells is no longer a comfort. It is a summons to dread. Will there be a new gap in the choir stalls whose voice will be missing? The tolling of the death knell becomes as regular as the call to vespers. The main meal in the refectory is a tense, silent affair. No one reads from the lives of the saints anymore. The only sound is the clatter of spoons and the shuffling of feet as monks eat as quickly as they can and flee the room. As if lingering in a communal space is tempting fate. The new monastic health trend isn't spiritual purity. It's avoiding your brothers at all costs. Fear begins to manifest in strange ways. Some monks become hyper-pious, flagellating themselves in their cells, believing that by punishing their own bodies they can appease God's wrath. Others swing the other way. You see brothers sneaking into the cellar to steal wine, seeking oblivion in drink. You see arguments break out over nothing. The tension's so thick that the slightest friction causes a spark. Brother Michael, the librarian, accuses a young novice of looking at him with the sick eye and nearly comes to blows with him before the prior intervenes. The community, your fortress, is eating itself from the inside out. You feel your own faith cracking. During the endless hours of prayer, you stare at the great crucifix above the altar, at the tormented face of the suffering Christ, and you feel a hot surge of anger. Why? Why is this happening? You have given your life to God. You have forsaken the world. You have taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. You have followed the rule. This was the deal. You serve God, and He protects you. The deal is being broken. Historians debate whether the great plagues of the Middle Ages led to a mass revival of piety born from terror, or a cynical, widespread crisis of belief in the face of the Church's powerlessness. In your heart, you feel both happening at the same time, a dizzying whirlwind of desperate prayer and bitter doubt. One moment you are on your knees, begging for mercy with every fiber of your being. The next, you are staring at the stone ceiling, a cold, hard atheism settling in your gut. The sickness itself is horrifyingly swift. You see it happen to Brother Luke, the young monk who first told you about the swellings. You stand near him during none. He looks pale, but nothing more. By the time the bell rings for Vespers, 3 hours later, he is being half carried, half dragged to the infirmary, shivering violently and speaking nonsense, a high fever already raging. You hear later that the dark, hard lumps the buboes have already appeared in his armpits. The name for these swellings is whispered now. A word dredged up from old books of medicine. A word that feels cursed on the tongue, bubonic. The bubonic plague. It is no longer a vague pestilence, it has a name. And giving it a name makes it more real, more powerful. The tipping point comes a week after the first death knell. It is the death that finally shatters the last vestiges of hope. It is for Brother Thomas, the cantor. He has fought for 6 days, his strong young body resisting longer than most. But in the end, the sickness wins. The death knell tolls for him in the middle of the afternoon. Its slow, mournful clang silencing the entire abbey. Thomas, the golden-voiced Thomas, whose singing was the soul of the abbey's prayer. His voice was proof of God's beauty on earth, a direct conduit of the divine. If his piety, his youth, his gift could not save him, then what hope is there for any of you? His death is not just the loss of a man, it is the loss of a symbol. It is the death of beauty, the death of spirit. It is God hanging up the phone. That evening, you gather for Vespers. The prior looks to the subcantor's stall, but it is empty. Brother William is now sick himself. The prior looks around the remaining, terrified monks. No one will meet his eye. No one dares to even try to lead the chant. And so, for the first time in the 200-year history of the Abbey of St. Rigbertus, the evening prayer is not sung. It is spoken. The words are recited in a flat, fearful monotone, a dirge of defeat. The silence where Thomas's soaring voice should be is a vast, howling emptiness. It is the sound of utter, absolute failure. You stand in your stall, your head bowed, the mumbled Latin washing over you without meaning. The shadow has not just fallen, it has swallowed you all. The prayers have failed. The faith is broken. The fortress is a tomb. And the only thing you know for certain is that the bell will toll again tomorrow. The spoken Vespers becomes the new normal. So does the fear. The death of Brother Thomas has left a wound in the community that cannot be closed, a silence that prayer cannot fill. You move through the next day in a fog of dread. Every toll of the death knell, and it tolls twice more before noon, is no longer a shock, but a grim, rhythmic punctuation mark in your new life. The Abbey, once a place of serene order, now feels like a sinking ship. The crew is decimated, the captain is lost, and the sea is rising. That afternoon, the abbot calls you all to the chapter house again. His second emergency meeting in less than a fortnight. This time, he does not look merely weary, he looks broken. The weight he carries seems to have fractured his very bones. He doesn't mount the steps to his throne. He stands on the floor with you, a gesture of humility that is so out of character it terrifies you more than any sermon. He is no longer the abbot. He is just one of you, a shepherd whose flock is being slaughtered before his eyes. My sons, he says, and his voice is a dry whisper of rustling leaves. Prayer is not enough. Penance is not enough. He pauses, letting the weight of that admission settle in the silent room. It is a tectonic shift, a public declaration that the central pillar of your entire existence has crumbled. Faith has failed. The sickness was brought to us from the outside. He continues, his eyes scanning your faces. From the world of men and commerce, we opened our doors in charity, and in return. Death has entered. We cannot fight what is already inside us, but we can stop feeding it. We can stop any more of the world's poison from entering these walls, and we must ensure that our own affliction does not spread beyond us. To the village, to the innocent, he takes a deep breath. I have made a decision. We are closing the gates. No one will enter, and no one will leave. We will face this trial alone. With whatever strength God has left us, we will trust in our own hands, our own stores, our own resilience. Saint Rigbertus will be sealed. A murmur runs through the assembled monks. It is a sound of shock, of fear, of protest. To seal the gates is an act of ultimate despair. It is an admission of utter defeat. It is turning your sanctuary into a prison. Brother Michael, the stern librarian, stands up. Father Abbot, he says, his voice tight with outrage. This is madness. This is a surrender. Our duty is to the world, to offer a beacon of hope, not to hide from it like cowards. We must trust in God's providence, not in locks and bars. God's providence has seen fit to fill our cemetery. Brother Michael the Abbot snaps, a flash of his old fire returning. I will not see this house, this 200-year-old legacy, extinguished because of blind pride. Look around you, we are dying. The rule is broken. The work is undone. All we have left is survival. He looks from Michael's furious face to the rest of you. This is my decision. It is final. Brother Almoner, you will give the last of our alms to the poor at the gate. Tell the villagers not to approach for one full cycle of the moon. Tell them we are undertaking a period of absolute retreat and prayer. Lie if you must. Then, you will bar the gate, and it will not be opened until I command it. Historians will one day argue whether the practice of quarantine in your era was born from a primitive but growing understanding of contagion, or if it was simply a desperate, brute force measure to impose some kind of order on a world spiraling into chaos. Looking at the abbot's haunted eyes, you know the truth. This is not a calculated medical strategy. This is the last, desperate gamble of a man who has run out of options. You all follow the abbot out into the main courtyard. It feels like a funeral procession. You watch as the almoner, his face grim, distributes the last of the abbey's bread and coins to the small crowd of beggars and tenants who gather daily at the gatehouse. He speaks to them, his words lost in the wind. But you can see the confusion and fear on their faces as they back away. Then, the moment comes. The great main gate of the abbey is a colossal thing of iron-banded oak. It has stood open and welcome for centuries. Now, you watch as 4 lay brothers put their shoulders to it. Groaning with the effort, it moves slowly, reluctantly, scraping against the stone ground. The slice of outside world visible through the opening shrinks a sliver of green hill, a patch of blue sky, the dirt road leading away. It gets smaller and smaller, and then it is gone. Thump. The 2 halves of the gate meet, and then comes a sound that seals your fate. It is the sound of the great iron bar, thick as a man's thigh, being dropped into its massive stone brackets. Kirchunk. The sound is final. Absolute. It echoes off the stone walls of the courtyard and seems to vibrate in your very teeth. You are locked in. The fortress has become a cage. You took a vow of stability, a promise to remain within the monastery for the rest of your life. You just never imagined the rest of your life might be measured in weeks. A strange, suffocating silence descends upon the courtyard. You look at the walls around you. Yesterday, they were a symbol of peace and seclusion. Today, they are prison walls. You look at your brothers. Yesterday, they were your spiritual family. Today, they are your fellow inmates. And the warden is an invisible, indiscriminate killer. The practical implications of the abbot's decision become clear almost immediately. The Abbey of St. Rigbertus is, thankfully, designed for self-sufficiency. It has its own vast vegetable gardens, its own orchards, a mill for grinding grain, a bakery, a brewery, and storehouses filled with the tithes from its tenant farms. This is the common model of a major Benedictine house, a self-contained economic and spiritual universe. But that self-sufficiency was always supplemented by the outside world. By trade for salt and iron, for the fine vellum you use in the scriptorium, for the medicines and spices Brother Anselm once used. Now, that is all gone. Brother John, the cellarer, a man you once saw as a glorified bean counter, is suddenly the most important man in the abbey. The abbot tasks him with performing a full inventory of all your resources. You are assigned to help him. The work is a welcome distraction from the terror. But it is also deeply sobering. You spend days in the cool, dark, musty-smelling storehouses, counting sacks of grain, barrels of salted fish, wheels of cheese, and casks of wine and beer. Brother John is meticulous, his face a grim mask of concentration as he makes notes on a slate. The grain will last 6 months, if we are careful. He mutters to you, his voice low. The beer, 3. The wine. Perhaps a year. But that is for the mass and the infirmary. The salted meat and fish, a month. Maybe 2. It feels like planning for a long winter. But you are not fighting the cold. You are fighting a fire that is consuming your house room by room. And you have no idea how long it will burn. The abbot orders immediate, strict rationing. The main meal of the day is reduced by half. The light supper is eliminated entirely, replaced by a single cup of thin beer. It is the monastery's first official portion control diet, and it's brutally effective. Mostly because no one has much of an appetite anyway. A new social order, a new rhythm, begins to emerge from the wreckage of the old one. The work of God, the copying, the studying, the elaborate chanting is abandoned. The work of survival takes its place. Your days are now filled with manual labor. You, the scholar, the man of letters, are sent to the gardens to weed and till the soil alongside the lay brothers. You dig your hands into the cold, damp earth, the same earth that has just swallowed so many of your friends, and you try not to think about it. The most feared job is, of course, work in the infirmary. Brother Anselm, the old infirmerer, is now dead. Having succumbed to the sickness he could not comprehend, he is replaced by Brother Philip, not the gardener, but a younger man of the same name, a quiet brother who once worked in the library. He did not volunteer. He was ordered. You see him sometimes, crossing the courtyard, his face gray with exhaustion and terror. He no longer looks like a monk. He looks like a soldier trapped on a hopeless battlefield. The brothers who are forced to assist him are treated as pariahs. They are housed separately, they eat separately, and when they walk past, the rest of you press yourselves against the wall and hold your breath. A primitive but powerful instinct for self-preservation, overwhelming any sense of Christian charity. And then there are the grave diggers. A rotating team of 4 lay brothers are given the horrifying, endless task of burying the dead. They work all day, their shovels rarely resting. The cemetery is expanding at an alarming rate, a growing patch of raw, brown earth scarring the green landscape behind the church. You see them at a distance, their movements mechanical, their faces numb with the horror of their work. They smell of sweat, dirt, and the vinegar they constantly use to wash their hands and faces. They, too, are ostracized. They are the untouchables. The men who handle death for a living. Fear makes you all cruel. One evening, you climb the winding stone stairs to the top of the bell tower. You need to escape the suffocating confines of the cloister, to breathe air that doesn't feel thick with death and despair. From the top, you can see for miles. The world outside the walls is still there. It looks beautiful, peaceful, and achingly normal. You see the green rolling hills, the dark line of the forest, the smoke rising from the chimneys of the village. The sun is setting, painting the clouds in hues of orange and pink. It is a world you can no longer touch. Are they safe out there, or is the same horror unfolding in that village? In the town beyond it? All across the world? The not knowing is a special kind of torture. You look down into your own world, the Abbey. From this height, it looks like a model, a perfect architectural diagram. You can see the square of the cloister, the long roof of the church, the separate building of the infirmary where a single lamp burns in a window. You see two small, dark figures emerge from the infirmary, carrying a long, wrapped bundle between them. The gravediggers. They move slowly towards the cemetery. You are trapped in a haunted house, a house filled with the ghosts of the dead and the groans of the dying. The gate did not protect you. It has only ensured that there is no escape. The old Abbey motto was Pax, peace. The new one. You think with a humor so dark it feels like choking. Should be noli exire. Do not exit. You have become the Cistercians of the damned. A division is growing within the remaining community. The abbot's decision to bar the gates has cleaved you in two. There is a faction, led by Brother Michael, who believe this is a profound act of faithlessness. They spend their days in the church, fasting to the point of collapse, praying with a desperate, almost angry fervor. They refuse their work details in the garden. They argue that the only cure is a return to God, and that the abbot has chosen the path of worldly cowardice. Your faction, the realists, believes that prayer has been tried and has failed. Survival is now in your own hands. You till the soil. You help ration the food. You try to maintain some semblance of order. You see the pious faction as delusional. Dangerous fools. They see you as godless heathens. The arguments are bitter. Whispered in corners of the cloister. The brotherhood is fractured. You are walking back to the dormitory one night when you see it. Someone has used a piece of charcoal to scrawl a message on the wall of the cloister. Deus nos derelicit. God has forsaken us. The abbot has it scrubbed away before morning. But it's too late. Everyone has seen it. Someone has dared to write down the terrible thought that is festering in everyone's heart. The shadow has not just fallen over your monastery, it has seeped into the very stone. You lie on your cot, listening to the now familiar sounds of coughing from across the hall, and you realize the truth of the new reality. Your enemy isn't just the plague, it's the despair. It's the hunger that will soon begin, and it is each other. The charcoal graffiti is gone by matins, scrubbed from the stone by a terrified novice, but its ghost remains. Deus nos derelicit. God has forsaken us. The words hang in the air, an unspoken creed for the new reality. The community of St. Rigbertus is no longer a single body. It has been cleaved in two, not by a sword, but by a single. Unanswerable question. What do you do when prayer fails? On one side, you have the faction of the faithful, led by Brother Michael, the librarian. They have doubled down on piety. They see the plague as God's flail, a punishment for the abbey's worldliness, for its pride in its library and its wealth. Their response is to become more monastic than the rule itself. They eat almost nothing, subsisting on bread and water. They spend their days and nights in the church, their voices raw from chanting the penitential psalms. They have abandoned all manual labor, for to till the soil or mend a roof is to turn your back on God, the only one who can save them. It is the medieval equivalent of a thoughts and prayers campaign, but with a terrifying, fanatical sincerity on the other side. You have the faction of the realists. You are one of them. You are not faithless, not yet, but you are practical. You believe God gave you a mind to think with and hands to work with. You see the dwindling food stores, the weeds choking the vegetable patches, the sick who need water, and the dead who need burying. While the faithful pray for a miracle, you labor for survival. The resentment between the two groups is a thick, ugly thing in the refectory. You sit on opposite sides of the hall. You glare at their uneaten rations of pottage, which you know will go to waste. They glare back at your dirt-stained hands and your weary faces, seeing you as faithless pragmatists, men who would try to bargain their way out of God's judgment. The abbot, a ghost haunting his own abbey, does nothing. He is paralyzed, a man caught between the two warring halves of his own soul. He wants to believe with Michael, but he sees the sense in your labor, and so he remains secluded. His authority shattered, leaving the two factions to circle each other like wolves. Your new work, the work that consumes you, is not in the garden. It has become a secret. Forbidden obsession. It started in the ruins of the scriptorium. The place is abandoned now, a dusty mausoleum for half-finished manuscripts. But your training as a scribe, the meticulous attention to detail, the need for order and accuracy has not left you. You cannot simply watch your brothers die. You need to understand. You need to find a pattern in the chaos. You are not alone. Brother John, the cellarer, with his pragmatic mind for numbers and inventory, thinks like you do, and surprisingly, so does Brother Matthew, the quiet monk who sleeps in the cot next to yours, a man who once worked as a mason, repairing the abbey walls, and who sees the world in terms of stress points and structural integrity. The three of you have become a secret cabal, the investigators of the apocalypse. Your methods are simple and grim. You talk to the gravediggers. They are shunned by everyone else. But they see the truth of the disease in its final, horrifying form. You ask them about the buboes, the dark swellings. Are they always in the same place, groin and armpits? Mostly. They say, sometimes the neck. You talk to young Brother Philip, the terrified new infirmary. You bring him water and help him burn the soiled straw from the sickbeds. And in return, he tells you what he sees. He describes the raging thirst, the delirium, the black spots that sometimes appear on the skin in the final hours. You take this information back to the scriptorium, on a spoiled piece of vellum, a page from a cancelled history of the Lombard kings. You begin to make a map, not a map of the world, but of your world, a map of the abbey. You mark every monk's position in the dormitory, in the choir, in the refectory, and with a piece of charcoal. You mark the dead, as the death knell tolls day after day. You add new marks to your grim ledger, and a pattern begins to emerge. It is undeniable. The sickness is not random. It is not. As the old theories held, a miasma, a poisonous cloud of bad air that infects everyone it touches. If it were miasma, the dormitory should have been wiped out in a single night. No, your map shows something else. It shows a chain. It started near the guest house, with Clement and Simon. Then it jumped to the infirmary, where they were taken. Then it appeared in the choir, near where Clement used to sit. It follows the lines of contact, of proximity. It spreads from person to person. This seems obvious, a simple deduction. But in your world, it is a radical, dangerous heresy. It contradicts centuries of established medical theory, the wisdom of the ancient Greeks, and, most importantly, the theological framework of the plague. If the sickness is a divine judgment, it should be righteous, falling on the sinful, or it should be a great, sweeping fire. It should not be this methodical, creeping thing, passed along by a touch or a shared breath. It feels too mundane, too physical, for an act of God. For your little group becomes a desperate research team in the world's worst clinical trial, the official medical doctrine. The theory of the four humors that old Anselm lived by is clearly useless. That theory states that the body is composed of four liquids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that health requires them to be in balance. The plague, with its fever and dark sores, was seen as a catastrophic excess of hot. Corrupt blood and black bile, but bleeding the patients only kills them faster. You know this because you have seen it, so you turn to the other remedies stored in the infirmary. You find a jar of theriac, a famous and wildly complex cure-all, a sticky black paste made from dozens of ingredients, including viper's flesh, opium, and cinnamon. It was a hugely expensive substance. The pinnacle of pharmaceutical art. You persuade Brother Philip to give a small amount to a sick novice. The novice dies anyway, perhaps a little more peacefully. Thanks to the opium, you try burning bundles of juniper and rosemary in the corridors. As the books recommend for purifying the air, it does nothing to stop the sickness. But for a few hours, the reek of death is replaced by the pleasant, sharp scent of herbs. It's a small, pathetic mercy. But you take it. You feel like a fool, trying to fight a dragon with a pot of potpourri. But you have to do something. One afternoon, the abbot finds you. He appears in the doorway of the scriptorium like an apparition, thinner and grayer than ever. He looks at the three of you huddled over your terrible map. He sees the list of the dead. The lines and arrows you have drawn to show the path of the contagion. His eyes, full of a deep, weary sadness, fix on the vellum. "What is this?" he whispers. It is Brother John who answers, his voice steady. "It is a study, Father Abbot. We are trying to understand the nature of the sickness." "The nature of the sickness is the will of God," the abbot says, his voice gaining a hard edge. He steps into the room. Brother Michael is behind him, his face a mask of triumphant righteousness. He had clearly followed you, eager to expose your blasphemy. "This is not study," Michael sneers, pointing a bony finger at your map. "This is pride. This is an attempt to chart the mind of God, to reduce his holy judgment to a set of lines and circles. It is blasphemy. We have charted the dead." "Brother Michael, not the mind of God," you say, your voice surprising you with its boldness. You stand up, your heart hammering in your chest, and the chart shows that the sickness is passed between us. It is not a miasma. It is a poison we give to each other. If we could understand how, perhaps we could stop it. Stop it! Michael laughs. A harsh, ugly sound. You think your little map can stop the wrath of the Almighty He has sent this plague to purify us. And you seek to evade the flames. You are like a child trying to build a dam of mud against the great flood. God gave us reason. Father Abbot, you plead. Turning to the old man. He made us in his image. Surely he did not intend for us to simply lie down and die. The prayers have not worked. The fasts have not worked. More than half our brothers are now dead. Perhaps God does not want more prayer. Perhaps he wants us to use the minds he gave us. This is the great, unspoken debate of your age. Played out in this dusty, death-haunted room, is the world run by the inscrutable will of God? To be endured through faith alone, or is it a set of mechanisms? A system that can be observed, understood, and perhaps even influenced by man? The academic debate over the role of monasteries in the birth of science is no longer academic. You are living it and losing it. The abbot looks from your earnest face to Michael's furious one. He looks down at your map. at the charcoal crosses that represent men he baptized, men he mentored, men he loved. You can see the war in his eyes, but he is a man of a dying generation, his mind forged in a crucible of absolute faith. He cannot make the leap. This is a sin of pride, he says finally, his voice heavy with resignation and sorrow. You are placing your own intellect above the mystery of God's plan. I will not have it. The only hope for this house is a return to faith, to humility. He gestures to your map. Burn it. The words are a physical blow. All your work, all your desperate, meticulous observation. Father, please. You begin, but he cuts you off. Burn it, he roars, with a flash of the authority he once commanded. And you will all cease this investigation. You will return to your duties. You will pray. You will work in the garden, and you will submit to the will of God. That is an order. He turns and sweeps out of the room, Michael following like a smug shadow. You are left there, the three of you, in stunned, defeated silence. You look at your map, the first and only thing that has made any sense in this entire nightmare. It is a masterpiece of grief, a testament to your fallen brothers, and you have been ordered to destroy it. With heavy hearts, you take the vellum to the small brazier in the corner of the room, used for melting wax for seals. You hold it to the embers. The corner blackens, curls, and then catches flame. You watch as the fire consumes your work. You watch the names of the dead turn to ash. Clement, Simon, Philip, Thomas. They vanish into smoke. All that observation, all that pathetic, desperate hope, gone. You feel a cold, profound emptiness. Reason has lost faith. In its most blind and brutal form, has won, defeated. You leave the scriptorium and head towards the church for vespers. As you cross the cloister, you see a small commotion near the chapter house entrance. A group of monks from Michael's faction are gathered around someone on the ground. It is Brother Lawrence, one of Michael's most fervent disciples, a man who had spent the last week in the church, fasting and praying, refusing to even walk in the gardens for fear of worldly distraction. He is on his hands and knees, retching. His face is pale and slick with sweat. As you watch, frozen in place, he shivers violently, a long, rattling tremor that shakes his entire body. It is the first sign. The sign you have now seen a dozen times. The sign you know with absolute certainty. Brother Michael rushes to his side, trying to help him up. It is just the fast. Brother, he says, his voice loud and strained, you are weak from prayer. A little water is all you need, but you know it is not the fast. You look at Michael, kneeling beside his dying follower, his face a sudden mask of confusion and terror. You look at the sick man, whose only contact for a week has been with the other pious brothers in the enclosed space of the church. Your map may be ashes, but the truth it told is undeniable, and it is a truth that has just proven itself. Once again, right before your eyes, you have the knowledge, but you are powerless. And the plague, which does not care about factions or faith or blasphemy, continues its grim, methodical work. Methodical. The sight of Brother Lawrence, the zealot, shivering on the flagstones is a judgment, but not the one Brother Michael had been praying for. It's the cold, impartial judgment of nature. The plague does not care about piety. It does not care about faction. It is a blind reaper, and it has just swung its scythe into the heart of the faithful. Chaos follows. Brother Michael, his face a mess of terror and confusion, tries to help Lawrence to his feet, but the other members of his faction back away, their eyes wide with the same fear they had once condemned as faithlessness. The carefully constructed reality of their fanatical piety shatters in an instant. The disease isn't a spiritual test they were winning through devotion. It was simply a contagion they had been lucky enough to avoid. Until now, Their luck has just run out. In that moment, the factions die. There are no more realists, no more faithful. Ideology is a luxury for those who have time to think. You no longer have that luxury. The next few weeks dissolve into a blur of waking horror. A single, grinding, endless task. The old rhythm of the canonical hours, the gentle, guiding structure of your life, vanishes completely. No one rings the bells for matins or vespers anymore. There are not enough healthy men to form a choir, and no one has the heart for prayer. The only bell you hear is the death knell. At first, it tolls 3 or 4 times a day, then 5, then 7. Soon, it becomes a constant, droning presence in the background of your life. So frequent that the individual tolls blur into one another. It is the soundtrack of your extinction. The bell tolls for Brother Lawrence. It tolls for the 2 novices who helped him to the infirmary. It tolls for Brother John, the cellarer, your fellow investigator. Found dead over his meticulously kept ledgers of dwindling supplies. His practicality could not save him. The daily rituals of life, the ones that once defined you, are replaced by a new, grim liturgy. Your world shrinks to 3 brutal, repetitive actions: fetching water, hauling bodies, and digging graves. Your day begins when you wake, not to a cymbalum, but to the groans of the sick in the dormitory. Over half the cots are empty now, their straw mattresses either burned or waiting for a new occupant who will, in turn, use it for a few feverish days before being hauled out himself. You and the other survivors, a dwindling handful, rise and begin the work. First, the water. The sick are consumed by a raging, unquenchable thirst. You spend hours hauling buckets from the cloister, well to the 2 infirmaries, the original building, and the storage barn that now serves as its annex. You walk into these places and the stench hits you like a physical blow. It is the smell of sweat, unwashed bodies, sickness, and the cloying. Sweet odor of death. Men you once shared bread with lie on pallets of straw, their eyes wide with delirium, their skin burning with fever. They plead for water, their voices cracked and hoarse. You give it to them, trying not to breathe too deeply, trying not to look into their eyes, because you see your own fate reflected there. You are no longer a brother offering comfort, you are a functionary, hydrating the dying. This is not charity. It is a grim, logistical task. When a man dies, he is left where he lies until the second part of the liturgy can be performed, hauling the bodies. 2 of you will enter, cover your faces with vinegar-soaked cloths, and wrap the corpse tightly in its own blanket. The bodies are surprisingly heavy, a dead weight that saps your strength. You carry them out of the infirmary, across the courtyard, to the cemetery. At first, you tried to use a stretcher, but it was too slow. Now, you just carry them. 1 man at the head, 1 at the feet, a constant, lurching procession of death. You no longer feel grief. You no longer feel pity. You feel a profound, bone-deep weariness, and a numb, mechanical resolve. Get the body out. Make room for the next one. The third and final task is the digging. The small, orderly cemetery behind the church, with its neat rows of simple wooden crosses, is full. You ran out of space a week ago, for a few days. You buried men 2 to a grave, a desperate, undignified solution. But you cannot dig fast enough. The bodies are piling up. The abbot makes one last decision before he disappears entirely into the seclusion of his chambers. He stands on the steps of the chapter house, a scarecrow in a black habit, and points a trembling finger towards the apple orchard, its trees heavy with the promise of a harvest that will never be gathered. Consecrate it, he whispers to the prior. Consecrate the whole field. We will bury them there. And so you begin to dig the pit. It is the most horrific work you have ever done. The task of digging individual graves is replaced by the singular, monstrous effort of excavating a massive trench in the rich, dark soil of the orchard, you and a dozen other brothers. All that is left of the worker contingent. Drive your spades into the earth. The rhythmic scrape and thud of the shovels is the only work song you have left. You dig until your back screams in protest, until your hands are covered in blisters that break and bleed. The smell of the freshly turned earth mingles with the ever-present stench of decay from the growing pile of blanket-wrapped bodies waiting nearby. You have become ghouls, defiling the earth to hide your dead. This pit is the ultimate failure, a mass-produced solution for mass-produced death. As you work, you observe the strange psychology of the other survivors. Some, like Brother Matthew the Mason, have gone completely silent. He works with a grim, focused efficiency, never speaking. His face a granite mask. He seems to be trying to process the horror by turning himself into a machine. Others have gone the opposite way. Brother Francis, a man who was once so pious he would weep during the Psalms, has developed a vicious gallows humor. Better dig it deep. Brothers, he calls out, his voice unnervingly cheerful. Don't want them climbing out again. He laughs, a sharp, barking sound that makes you shudder. It is the sound of a mind that has been broken, a nihilistic glee in the face of the abyss. You feel yourself caught somewhere between the two extremes. Between silent numbness and hysterical despair, the mortality rate is something you try not to contemplate. Historians in the future may debate the plague's toll, settling on figures between 30 and 60% of Europe's population. But you are living the grim reality of a closed system. Here, walled in with the contagion. The numbers are not theoretical. You don't need a vellum map anymore to do the math. You started with 52 monks. You are now, maybe, 15, and more are falling sick each day. The mortality rate in your fortress is not 60%. It is trending with horrifying speed. Towards 90, the old leadership is gone. Brother Michael, the leader of the now defunct faithful, is one of the next to go. You find him in the church, not praying, but slumped in a pew. His body already cold. His fanaticism could not save him. His faith was a shield of glass against a storm of stone. You and another brother carry his stiff, light body out to the pit. There is no ceremony. There is no irony. There is just one less mouth to feed. One less body to stumble over. A few days later, the abbot dies. No one has seen him for over a week. The prior, a timid man named Father Martin, who is now the de facto leader, finally works up the courage to break down the door to the abbot's chambers. He is not in his bed. He is on the floor of his private chapel, clutching a crucifix, his body emaciated. He has not died of the plague. He has died of despair, or of starvation. Having refused all food, his death is the final. Silent exclamation point on your catastrophe. The shepherd is dead. The flock is scattered and dying. You are utterly, completely leaderless. The bell tower has been silent for 3 days now. The brother whose job it was to ring the death knell is himself dead. And no one has the strength or the will to take his place. The silence is more terrifying than the tolling. It is the silence of abandonment. It feels like the world has forgotten you, like God has forgotten you. The day comes when only 8 of you are left. 8 monks out of 52. The rest are sick, dying, or in the pit. The 8 of you spend the entire day hauling the last of the bodies from the infirmaries and the dormitory to the orchard. The work is slow, agonizing. You are weak from hunger and exhaustion. As the sun sets, casting long, bloody shadows across the abbey, you heave the last body into the communal grave. It is the prior, Father Martin, who had sickened only yesterday. There is no one above you now, no abbot, no prior. Just 8 ragged, filthy, half-starved men, Standing on the edge of a mass grave, you look at the faces of the others. You barely recognize them. They are hollow-eyed strangers, their faces smeared with dirt and grief. You have all become gravediggers. That is your final, single identity. The work is done. For today at least. There is no one left to bury. You stand there, leaning on your shovel, too tired to move. The air is still. The world is silent. The bell does not toll. The birds do not sing. It is the profound silence of the end of things. You look down into the pit, at the jumble of blanket-wrapped forms, your brothers, your family, and you feel nothing. Not sadness, not anger, not fear, just a vast, hollow emptiness. This, you think, is what the end of the world feels like. Not a bang, not a whisper, but just silence. The silence of a fortress that has become a tomb. The silence of the world is a physical weight. You stand by the pit, leaning on your shovel, one of 8 ragged figures etched against a bruised purple sky. The work is done. The dead are buried. The silence that follows is not peaceful. It is the silence of a vacuum. The sound of everything having been taken away. There is nothing left to do. There is no one left to die. The next few days pass in a gray, timeless haze. You and the other 7 survivors move through the empty abbey like ghosts haunting your own ruins. You are Brother Matthew, the silent mason, Brother Francis, with his terrible broken humor. Brother Alan, a young novice who now looks older than the dead abbot, and 4 other lay brothers whose names you barely knew before, but whose faces are now etched into your memory. 8 of you? The final tally. You exist. You do not live. You scavenge for food in the nearly empty storehouses. You drink water from the well. You sleep fitfully. Scattered throughout the abbey. No one willing to face the cavernous, ghost-filled dormitory. You avoid each other, each man an island of grief. The expectation hangs in the air that the silence is only temporary, that one of you will soon start to shiver, to cough, and the final, lonely round of the plague will begin. But it doesn't. A day passes. No one new falls sick. Then a second day, you wake up, your body aching, your stomach hollow, but your skin is cool. Your breathing is even. A week crawls by. The 7 other men are still walking, still breathing. The constant gnawing fear that has been your companion for months begins to recede. Just slightly, leaving behind a strange and unnerving emptiness. It is this emptiness, this lack of immediate crisis, that allows you to think again. The part of your mind that built the map, the part the abbot ordered you to shut down, flickers back to life. You are a scribe, a man trained to see patterns, and the pattern before you is the most important one of all 8 survivors. Why them? The question becomes an obsession. It is a mystery more compelling than any of Pliny's tales. You start to watch the others, to think back. You replay the last terrible month in your mind. Not the horror, but the details. Who fell, who survived. What was the difference? Your burned map is gone, but the data is seared into your memory. You remember the chain of infection? You remember the factions? Brother Michael's faithful who shut themselves in the church to pray? They are all gone. Every single one. Lawrence, who collapsed in the cloister, was the first of them, and the rest followed in a swift, brutal cascade. Then you look at the 8 of you. There's you, the scribe, who was put on gardening duty. There is Matthew, the mason, who was tasked with reinforcing a crumbling wall on the abbey's western perimeter. There is Alan, the novice, who was assigned to the brewery to turn the last of the barley. And the 4 lay brothers. Their lives have always been ones of manual. Outdoor labor in the fields and workshops. The observation strikes you with the force of a revelation. It is so simple, so obvious, that you feel a fool for not seeing it before. Every single survivor worked primarily outside, or, like you, had been forced into outdoor labor after the old routines collapsed. Every single victim from the last wave of the sickness belonged to the faction that had confined themselves indoors, breathing the same stagnant, infected air in the church for days on end. You find Brother Matthew sitting on the edge of the cloister fountain, staring into the scummy water. He has not spoken in what feels like weeks. "Matthew," you say, your voice raspy from disuse. He looks up, his eyes dull. "The ones who died last," you say. Sitting near him, Michael, Lawrence, all of them. They stayed in the church. Matthew says nothing, but his eyes flicker with a spark of interest. "We survived." You continue. The idea taking shape as you speak it. "All of us. We were working outside. In the gardens, on the walls, in the fields." You look at him, seeking confirmation. Is it possible, then, that the sickness is weaker in the open air, that it thrives in the enclosed spaces? You suddenly remember something you'd read long ago. A minor passage in an old Greek medical text, dismissed by most scholars, which spoke of two forms of a pestilence, one that came with sores and fevers, and a second, deadlier form, a sickness of the breath that could pass between people in a crowd. You had no name for it then, no framework. But now, with the evidence of your dead brothers all around you, it makes a terrible, perfect sense. The plague wasn't one enemy, it was two. Matthew looks at you, and for the first time in a month, his face changes. The mask of numb despair cracks. He nods. Slowly, the air. He whispers, his voice a dry croak. The bad air is trapped in the rooms. It is the birth of a new theory. A theory born not of faith or superstition, but of observation and survival. It is the first glimmer of hope you have felt since the gates were barred. It is not a promise of salvation, but a hint of a strategy. That evening, you gather the 8 of you in the refectory. You light a fire in the great hearth. The first fire lit for warmth and not for burning soiled straw. In a long time, you tell them your theory. You speak of the two factions, of the indoor dead and the outdoor survivors. Brother Francis, the cynic, scoffs at first, so God prefers gardeners to priests. A fine theology that is, but the logic is undeniable. Everyone saw what happened to Michael's followers. Everyone knows that they, the survivors, are the ones who felt the sun on their backs and the wind on their faces. "So what do we do?" asks Alan. The young novice, his voice barely a whisper. "We stop living like mice in a trap." You say, a new confidence in your voice. "We live in the open air as much as we can. We abandon the dormitory. We sleep in the hayloft. We open every window and every door in this cursed place and let the wind of God scour it clean." It is a revolution. A public health policy for a population of 8. For the first time in months, you are not reacting to death. You are taking proactive steps towards life. It feels incredible. The new medical theory is breathtakingly simple. Step 1. Go outside. Step 2. Don't die. It's already proven more effective than 2 centuries of monastic medicine. A new routine begins. A routine of cleansing. The 8 of you work together. A real brotherhood forged in the crucible of loss. You throw open the great wooden shutters of the dormitory, the library, the scriptorium. You let the sunlight and the fresh, clean air pour into the stale. Death-scented rooms for the first time in what seems like a lifetime. You methodically strip the remaining cots, carrying the filthy, sweat-stained straw mattresses and blankets out to the orchard, far from the Abbey buildings. And you set them ablaze. The pillar of black smoke that rises into the sky is a funeral pyre for the plague itself. It is a signal to no one but yourselves that you are cleansing the world. You sleep in the main hayloft of the great barn. The sweet, dusty smell of old hay, a welcome replacement for the stench of sickness. The barn is airy, with huge doors that you leave wide open to the night. It is cold, but it feels clean. It feels safe. You begin to eat together again, not as a silent, fearful gathering, but as a community. Brother Francis, whose job was once in the kitchens, finds a forgotten stash of salted pork and a small sack of onions. He cooks a real meal, a stew that fills the small kitchen with a smell so delicious, so reminiscent of a life you thought was gone forever, that it almost makes you weep. You find a cask of the cellar's best wine, reserved for feast days, and you decide that survival is a feast day. You sit around the fire, the 8 of you, and you share a meal. You talk. You even laugh. A strange, rusty sound. It's the first team dinner where nobody dies, which, by the new standards of St. Rigbertus, is a roaring success. You are alive. The thought is so strange, so powerful. It is almost overwhelming. You have walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and somehow, you have come out the other side. You wonder about the reason. Was it the fresh air? Was it the hard work? Or was it something else? Something hidden? You think about the men who died, strong men and weak, young and old, and you look at the 8 of you, a random assortment of humanity. Perhaps the explanation is simpler and more mysterious than any theory of miasma or contagion. Perhaps some people just live. Historians and scientists will debate for centuries whether survival of the plague was a matter of environmental factors, or quarantine, or a hidden, random gift in the blood, a natural immunity some possessed and others did not. You do not know the answer. You only know that you are here. One afternoon, while you're clearing out the last of the rubbish from a small, unused storeroom, you hear a faint sound, a tiny, high-pitched mewing. You follow the sound and find, huddled in a dark corner behind a stack of old barrels, a cat, a scrawny tabby from the Abbey's barn cat colony, and curled up against her are 4 tiny, blind, squirming kittens, their mouths open, seeking warmth and life. You stare at them. In the midst of all this death, this overwhelming, all-consuming tide of it, this small, fierce creature has quietly, stubbornly, created new life. She has kept her children safe and hidden through the entire apocalypse. You call the others. The 7 of you crowd into the doorway, peering into the darkness. You look at the mother cat, fiercely protective of her young, and at the tiny, helpless scraps of fur, and a profound, unspoken understanding passes between you. Life is tenacious. It is stubborn. It finds a way. You stand there. The 8 of you, the last monks of St. Rigbertus, and you watch this tiny, ordinary miracle. The grief is a chasm in your soul. The loss is incalculable. The future is a terrifying blank. But for the first time, looking at this small, furry testament to survival, you allow yourself to believe that you might have a future. 2. The despair that has held you in its iron grip has finally, blessedly, cracked, and a little bit of light is starting to get in. The discovery of the kittens marks a turning point. Not in your circumstances, but in your spirit. It is a fragile, tentative pivot from pure survival to something that might, one day, resemble living again. Hope is too strong a word. What you feel is more like a quiet curiosity for tomorrow. For the first time in a very long time. You go to sleep wondering what the next day will bring, instead of who it will take. The sickness, it seems, has burned itself out. Having consumed nearly all the fuel in the Abbey, the fire has died down to embers. Weeks pass with no new cases. No fevers. No telltale shivering in the night. The 8 of you remain. The silence that settles over the Abbey is no longer the tense, waiting silence of a hospital ward, but the deep, profound, and somewhat unnerving silence of a necropolis. The crisis is over. Now you must learn to live in the wreckage. Your days become a slow, melancholic routine of exploration. You are tourists in your own home, walking through rooms that were once hives of activity and are now frozen in time. Monuments to a life that vanished in the blink of an eye. Each doorway you pass through is a doorway into memory. You walk into the great dormitory. The 52 cots are still there, arranged in their neat, silent rows. But now, only 8 are in use. Scattered in the airy hayloft of the barn, here, in this long, cavernous hall, the ghosts of your brothers are almost tangible. You can see them all. You see Brother Clement's round, cheerful face. You see Brother Luke, the young novice, his eyes wide with the fear he tried to hide. You see the abbot, walking his nightly rounds with his lantern. Sunlight streams through the high windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air where their snores and quiet coughs once hung. You run a hand over the rough wool blanket on an empty cot, and the silence is so complete you can hear the rasp of your own skin against the fabric. You wander into the refectory, the dining hall, the long tables, built to seat a community. Mock your small number. The 8 of you huddle at one end for your meals. Your voices small and thin in the vast, echoing space. You remember the sound of the lector's voice reading from the lives of the saints? The scrape of 50 spoons against wooden bowls. The sheer ambient noise of a large group of men eating. Now, the silence is broken only by your own cautious chewing. You have inherited the grandest, saddest estate in the world. You are asset-rich with an entire abbey at your disposal. But soul-poor and spirit-bankrupt, the most difficult place for you to enter is the scriptorium. Your personal ghost lives there. You push open the heavy oak door and the familiar smell of parchment and dry ink greets you. Nothing has been touched since the day the work stopped. Your unfinished copy of Pliny's Naturalis Historia lies on your slanted desk, the quill resting beside it as if you just stepped away for a moment. You look at the last word you wrote. The ink now faded to a dusty brown. You touch the vellum, the smooth, creamy surface that was once the canvas of your life's work. Beside your desk is Brother Paul's station, his magnificent, half-finished illumination of a letter D, a riot of faded color. The tiny pots of pigment are all dried up. The gold leaf has lost its luster. All that knowledge, all that skill, gone. You pick up a brush, dip it in water, and try to mix some of the dried lapis lazuli into a paste. You fail. The vibrant blue that Brother Paul created with such effortless grace is now a watery, gray mess in your hands. You realize with a sickening lurch that the knowledge wasn't in the pots. It was in the man. The specific way to grind the stone. The exact amount of egg tempera to add as a binder. The secret to making it shine like a piece of the sky that all died with Brother Paul. The Abbey's library may have saved the knowledge of the ancient world, but you have failed to save your own. It turns out the secret ingredient to most of the Abbey's functions was simply having someone who knew what they were doing. The 8 of you are a strange, accidental family, bound not by blood or affection, but by shared trauma. In the quiet evenings, sitting around a small fire, you begin to talk, to learn the histories of the men you now rely on. You learn that Brother Matthew, the silent mason, had a wife and child who died of a fever years before he joined the Abbey, and that he has been living with grief his entire adult life. You learn that Brother Francis's gallows humor is a desperate shield against a terror so profound he thinks he will go mad if he faces it head on. You learn that Alan, the novice, is only 17 and is terrified that he will be the last one left. A boy abbot of a kingdom of ghosts. You grapple, individually and collectively, with the crushing weight of survivor's guilt. Why us? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. You were not the most pious, not the strongest, not the most skilled. You are simply the ones who didn't die. There is no divine logic to it. no comforting narrative. It is the random, cruel, and ultimately baffling arithmetic of the plague. Living with that randomness is, in its own way, as difficult as living with the fear was, a debate, quiet and unspoken at first, begins to form. What is the proper way to handle this? How do you live in a place so saturated with death? Historians will one day debate whether societies that endure collective trauma seek to erase the memory or to monumentalize it. You are having that debate in real time. Brother Francis is firmly in the camp of erasure. The past is dead. Let it be dead. He says one evening, we should burn the old dormitory, tear it down. We live for today, for the stew in the pot and the wine in the cup. To look back is to turn to salt. But Brother Matthew, the mason, disagrees. He runs his hand over the stone of the cloister walk. This stone remembers them, he says, his voice low. To erase them is to kill them a second time. We have a duty. We should build something. A new chapel. A memorial with all their names carved on it. You find yourself caught in the middle. Part of you wants to pave over the entire nightmare, to pretend it never happened. But another part, the scribe in you, feels an overwhelming duty to record, to remember, to be the sole historian of your fallen world. The first step back towards a semblance of order is small, almost accidental. The days, without the structure of the bells, bleed into one another. One afternoon, Alan, the novice, looks up at the sun and says, "It must be time for none." He goes to the small chapel bell and, tentatively, he rings it. Not a death knell, not a call to a service, but just a single. Clear chime to mark the middle of the day. The sound cuts through the silence. Pure and clean. It is an anchor in the sea of time. From then on, you ring it every day at noon. A single bell. To prove you are still there. Your new purpose finds you in the library. It is the one place in the abbey that feels untouched by the disease. The books sit on the shelves, silent and patient. They have survived plagues before. They have survived fires and wars and the fall of empires. They are the ultimate survivors. You and the other 7 decide, by unspoken consensus, that this is your new calling. You are no longer monks in the traditional sense. The complex liturgy is beyond your numbers and your broken spirits. You are now librarians, custodians. Your sacred duty is to protect this vast, fragile trove of human knowledge. You begin the painstaking work of cleaning the books, of checking their bindings, of ensuring the library is free from damp and mice. It is a quiet, contemplative work. It is a purpose. It gives you a reason to get up in the morning that is not based on fear or the grim necessity of survival. From the high abbey walls, you look out at the world. The tenant farms that supply the abbey are quiet. The fields lie fallow. The village at the foot of the hill seems smaller, with fewer plumes of smoke rising from its chimneys. The devastation was not confined to your walls. This thought, which should be horrifying, brings a strange and guilty sense of connection. You are not the only ones. The whole world is a house of ghosts now. You wonder about the economic chaos that must be unfolding. The world turned upside down by a shortage of hands to till the fields and shear the sheep. But that is a problem for another day. For now, it is enough to guard your own silent kingdom. The mother cat from the storeroom has become the unofficial ruler of the abbey. She and her 4 kittens, now clumsy, tumbling balls of fur, have the run of the place. She walks the cloister with an air of serene ownership. The true abbess of St. Rigbertus. She is, after all, the most effective and decisive leader you've had in months. Watching her kittens play, wrestling with each other among the tombstones in the garden, is a better balm for your soul than any psalm. One evening, as the shadows lengthen, you all gather in the main church. It is a place you have mostly avoided, its emptiness too painful. But tonight feels different. You do not try to sing. The memory of the 50-man choir is too sharp. Instead, you take a taper and you light a single candle on the great altar. For yourself. Then another 7. One for each of your surviving brothers. The 8 small flames flicker bravely in the immense, dark space. Then, you turn to the great stock of votive candles. Silently, methodically. You begin to light the others. You light one for Thomas, the cantor, one for Michael, the librarian, one for John, the cellarer, one for the abbot, one for every brother you can name, and then for the ones whose faces you remember but whose names are lost to the fog of trauma. You keep going until 52 flames are burning on the altar. You stand back, the 8 of you, and you look at the sea of light. It is a constellation of souls. It is a silent tribute. It is an act of remembrance, not of prayer. The silence in the church is no longer the hollow silence of absence. It is a heavy, reverent silence, filled with the presence of the ones you have lost. In that moment, you are not just a random collection of survivors anymore. You are the keepers of the flame, and it is your solemn duty to ensure that it does not go out. The rhythm you settle into is one of quiet solemnity. You are no longer monks, not really. You are curators of a silent museum. The 8 of you, the last living exhibits. Your days are spent in the library, cleaning and preserving the books, or tending the gardens, coaxing life back from the neglected soil. The litany of prayer has been replaced by the litany of chores. You eat together. You work together. You sleep in the clean-smelling hayloft together. A season turns. The brutal heat of summer gives way to the crisp, golden melancholy of autumn. The apple trees in the orchard, the one standing sentinel over the mass grave of your brothers, produce a magnificent crop of fruit that no one has the heart to eat. Life inside the abbey walls is predictable, safe, and profoundly lonely. The outside world might as well not exist. It is a memory, a story you once read. The great gate remains barred, a symbol of a trauma you are not yet ready to confront. The change comes with a sound. It's a sound you haven't heard in almost a year. A rhythmic, metallic banging on the main gate. Not the frantic pounding of fear, but a steady, insistent knocking. The 8 of you freeze in the middle of the courtyard. You look at each other, your eyes wide. For months. The only sounds have been the ones you make yourselves. The wind and the cry of birds. This is a sound from outside. From the world you have locked away. Fear. A familiar old ghost. Prickles your skin. Is it the sickness returning? Is it bandits? Come to pillage what they think is a deserted abbey. Brother Matthew, ever the practical one, climbs the stone steps to the walkway above the gatehouse. He peers through one of the narrow slits in the stone. He stays there for a long time before climbing back down. His face pale and thoughtful. "It is a man," he says, his voice quiet. One man with a cart and 2 oxen. He looks like a farmer, not a soldier, not a bandit, just a man. The knocking continues, patient and steady. You convene an impromptu chapter meeting. The 8 of you gathered in the center of the courtyard. You are the chapter now. We cannot stay locked in here forever, Alan says, his voice trembling slightly. He has grown over the past months. The terrified boy replaced by a young man with old eyes. Our food will not last the winter. The grain is gone. We have only the vegetables from the garden. The world outside is what killed us, Brother Francis counters. His cynicism still his primary armor. We are safe in here. Opening that gate is inviting death back in for a second course. We don't know what is out there, you say, finding yourself once again in the role of the mediator. We have been living in a tomb. Perhaps the world has healed. Perhaps it is worse than we can imagine. But we cannot know until we look. We have a duty not just to these books, but to this abbey. We cannot let it crumble into dust because we are afraid to open the door. The debate is short. The truth of Alan's words is undeniable. Survival inside the walls is no longer a given. You have to face the world. You volunteer to be the one to go. Matthew, with his quiet strength, insists on coming with you. The others watch with anxious faces as the two of you approach the great gate. It takes the combined strength of 4 of you to lift the immense iron bar from its brackets. The sound of it scraping against the stone echoes the terrible finality of when it was dropped into place. You put your shoulders to the heavy oak, it groans in protest. Stiff from long disuse, slowly, a vertical slice of blindingly bright light appears. It widens, and the air that rushes in is cool and smells of damp earth, of fallen leaves, of a world you had almost forgotten. The gate swings open, and you and Matthew step outside the Abbey walls for the first time in what feels like a lifetime. The culture shock is immediate and overwhelming. The sheer intensity of the world is a sensory assault. The colors seem brighter, the sky a more piercing blue. The sound of the wind in the trees is a roar compared to the silence you've grown accustomed to. A bird's song makes you jump. It is the world's most intense re-entry program, and you feel like an astronaut stepping onto a strange and alien planet. The farmer is a wiry man with a deeply lined face and cautious eyes. He is leading a cart laden with empty barrels. He looks at the two of you, at your pale faces and ragged, ill-fitting habits. With a mixture of pity and awe, "Blessings on you, fathers," he says, his voice rough. We thought you were all gone. The bell. It stopped ringing months ago. God has seen fit to spare a few of us, Matthew says. His voice formal. What is it you seek? The Abbey's cider. Father, the man says. Gesturing to his barrels, It is time for the pressing. It is the one thing. The one thing that is the same as it was before. Before. The word hangs in the air between you. You tell the man that the apples have not been harvested, that there is no one left who knows how to work the great press. His face falls. The small piece of normalcy he was clinging to has vanished. He asks for news of a brother, his cousin, who was a lay brother in the kitchens. You recognize the name. You have to tell him that his cousin lies in the pit in the orchard. The man's face crumples. He weeps, silently, his shoulders shaking. It is a grief you know well. You give him a small pouch of coins from the almoner's box, a meaningless gesture, and send him on his way. His barrel's empty. Your first contact with the new world is a transaction of grief. You and Matthew walk down the familiar path towards the village that lies at the foot of the Abbey's hill. The landscape itself is changed. The tenant farms that dot the hillside are untended, their fields choked with weeds. You pass a cottage with its door swinging open, its interior dark and empty. The village is a shadow of its former self. Half the houses are shuttered, their gardens overgrown. On several doors, you see a crude cross painted in faded red ochre, a plague marker, a sign of a house that was consumed. You see a few faces peering at you from windows, suspicious and fearful. The living are afraid of ghosts, and you, emerging from the silent abbey, must look like ghosts to them. You find a small group of men gathered outside what used to be the tavern. They are drinking, their laughter loud and a little too wild. They fall silent as you approach, their eyes appraising you. Look what the plague coughed up, one of them mutters. You learn what has happened. The plague, which they called the Great Mortality, swept through the village like a fire. They say barely 1 in 3 survived. The old priest is dead. The lord of the manor, Sir Guy, is dead. Along with his wife and all his children, the entire structure of their world has been decapitated. This is where you see the greatest change, with the Lord gone and so few hands left to work the land. The survivors have discovered a new and intoxicating power. The steward for the new lord, some distant cousin from the south, came last month. One of the farmers tells you, his voice full of a new, defiant pride. He told us we must work the manor fields for the same pay as before. We laughed at him. We told him he could work the fields himself. We will work for wages. Good wages. Or we will not work at all. You are witnessing the first. Hesitant death rattle of feudalism. For centuries, the lives of these people have been tied to the land, to their lords. In a system as rigid and unchangeable as your own monastic rule, now, with labor so scarce, the value of a breathing man has skyrocketed. It is the greatest and most brutal labor market correction in human history. And these few, hardy survivors are the first to realize they now hold all the cards. A woman offers you a cup of ale. After months of watery abbey beer, the taste is a shocking explosion of flavor. It tastes of hops, of yeast, of life. You realize your monastic diet was less about piety and more about getting you accustomed to the blandness of eternity. You return to the abbey as the sun is setting. Your mind's reeling. The gate stands open, an invitation to a world that is both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. You gather the other 6 brothers in the now clean scriptorium, and you tell them everything. You tell them of the half-empty village, the newfound defiance of the peasants, the death of the old order. The world has been broken, you conclude, and it is being remade. The implications for your own small community are immense. You are the sole owners of one of the largest, wealthiest estates in the region. You have land, timber, a mill, storehouses, but you are only 8 men. You cannot work the land yourselves. You cannot enforce the old tithes and rents. You will have to hire labor, to pay wages, to participate in the new, chaotic economy that is rising from the ashes of the old one. The academic debate of the future will be whether the Great Mortality was the final blow to the medieval world or the bloody birth of the Renaissance. Did the trauma stifle all progress? Or did the shattering of the old structures create the space for new ideas and new social orders to grow? Standing here in your silent abbey, on the cusp of this frightening new world, you suspect the answer is both. You have seen the despair in the villagers' eyes, but you have also seen the spark of opportunity. That night, you do not bar the gate. Leaving it open is a conscious act of will, a statement that your isolation is over. You and the other 7 stand on the wall, looking out into the darkness. The world is no longer silent. You can hear the distant sound of that loud laughter from the village tavern, the bark of a dog. These small, ordinary sounds are now charged with a new significance. They are the sounds of a world that has survived. You have weathered the storm inside your fortress. You have survived the plague, the fear, the despair. Now you must face an entirely new challenge. You must learn to survive the world the plague left behind. 20 years. 2 full decades have passed since the world ended and began again. The man who survived is not the man you are now. That man was a scribe, his hands stained with ink, his mind filled with the words of others. You are the abbot of St. Rigbertus. The title feels both absurd and inevitable. When the last of the other 7 survivors, you're quiet. Steadfast brother. Matthew the Mason passed peacefully in his sleep last winter. The leadership of this strange, new abbey fell to you, the last man who remembers the time before. You are an old man now. Your back, which once ached from long hours in the scriptorium, now aches with the simple weight of years. You walk with the help of a sturdy staff made from the wood of an old oak that was struck by lightning the year after the plague. A fitting symbol. You've always thought something beautiful and useful. Born from a catastrophic fire, your walk this evening is a ritual, a quiet pilgrimage through the landscape of your own memory. You begin, as the story itself began, at the gatehouse. The great oak gates stand open. They are never barred now. You run a hand over the immense iron bar that now rests on the ground. A silent, rusting monument. You remember the terrible, final thud when it was dropped into place. sealing you in. And you remember the groan of the wood as you and Matthew forced it open again. Stepping out into a world you no longer recognized. The gate is a scar on the face of the abbey, and you touch it like a man tracing a scar on his own skin. A reminder of a wound that is healed but will never disappear. You walk through the main courtyard towards the church. It is the hour of vespers. You pause in the doorway and listen. A choir is singing. It is a small choir. Only a dozen voices. Mostly young men who were not even born when the great mortality swept through. They are the new monks of St. Rigbertus. They came in a trickle at first, then a steady stream in the years that followed orphans of the plague. Second sons with no inheritance in the reordered world, men seeking refuge from the chaos. They are a different breed from your old brothers. Less learned, more rough-hewn. Their piety more direct and less polished. This is one of the plague's strangest legacies, with so many of the old. Educated clergy gone. The church had to take what it could get. You find their youthful boisterousness both trying and secretly wonderful. You watch them complain about the weak cider at supper and you smile. Remembering the cask of the cellar's finest, you and the other survivors drank. A toast to the end of the world. These boys have no idea. Their voices in the church are strong. And the cantor, a young man named Benedict, has a fine, clear voice. But as you listen, your memory supplies a ghostly harmony the soaring, impossible tenor of Brother Thomas. Dead these 20 years. The new choir is the sound of life. But Thomas's silence is a part of the Abbey's song now. 2. Inside. You see the altar? A young novice is lighting the candles. He lights 20 of them. 12 for the current brothers, and 8 for the survivors who have since passed on. A separate candelabra off to the side holds 44 flames. The silent, permanent vigil for the fallen. The tradition you started on that dark, hopeless night has become part of the Abbey's new rule. This, too, is a legacy of the plague, a shift from confident, doctrinal faith to a more personal. Memorial 1. The Church Universal lost much of its prestige and authority in the plague. Unable to explain or stop the suffering, what grew in its place was something smaller. More human, the simple act of remembering your dead. You continue your walk, your staff clicking softly on the worn stones of the cloister. You pass the entrance to the scriptorium. You don't go in often anymore. It is a working room again. But the sublime artistry of the time before is gone. The new scribes produce clear, functional text, but the secrets of Brother Paul's luminous illustrations, of the perfect black ink and the brilliant blue pigments, died with the men who knew them. Your own unfinished manuscript of Pliny is kept in a locked case in the library now. The young monks look at it with awe. They call it the last manuscript of the old world. You just see it as the place where your life stopped and a different one began. Your pilgrimage always ends in the same place, the apple orchard. It is beautiful here in the evening light. The trees are gnarled and heavy with fruit. The grass is soft underfoot. It is, by all appearances, the most peaceful corner of the Abbey, but you are walking on ghosts beneath your feet, under the rich soil and the tangled roots. Lies the pit. 44 of your brothers are buried here. You know the exact spot. No marker designates it. There is no need, you are the marker, as long as you live. This ground is haunted and holy in equal measure. A quiet tradition. Started by you and the other survivors. Persists. The apples from this section of the orchard are never eaten by the monks. They are harvested separately, with a quiet prayer, and given away as alms to the poor and the traveler. A small, perpetual act of penance for your own survival. You look at the healthy, living trees, and you think of the grim debate you had with yourself and the other survivors. Should you remember? Or should you forget? The answer, you've come to realize, is that you must do both. You must build a new world on top of the old. Let the grass grow over the graves. But never, ever forget what lies beneath. The academic world of the future might ponder whether the trauma of the great mortality led to a culture of morbid art or a renewed zest for life. You, who lived it, know that it led to both. You live every day with a profound gratitude for the simple act of breathing. But every night, in your dreams, you still sometimes hear the tolling of the bell. You see the Abbey's current head of security, a fat, lazy descendant of the original mother cat, stalking a grasshopper near the orchard wall. You smile. Some things, at least, are constant as the last light fades. You turn back towards the Abbey buildings. The young monks are filing out of the church, their faces fresh and full of a life that was so nearly extinguished forever. You are their abbot, their connection to a past they can't possibly comprehend. You are a living testament. Your soul is a manuscript, and the plague has written its story upon it in an ink that will never fade. The peace you feel now is not the simple, untested peace of the time before. It is a harder peace, a scarred peace, forged in fire and tempered by grief, and you would not trade it for anything. And now your long walk is over. The sun has dipped below the hills, and the cool, soft blanket of evening settles over the valley. The air grows still, carrying the scent of cut grass and old, damp stone. The final echoes of the evening chant have faded, leaving behind a silence that is no longer empty, but full of peace. The day's work is done. The memories have been honored. The 52 candles flicker on the high altar, each flame a quiet, sleeping soul. You can feel the weariness in your own bones now, a deep and gentle tiredness that calls you toward rest. The hard edges of the day begin to soften and blur. The stone walls of the abbey seem to lose their weight, dissolving into the deep blue of the twilight. The world is slowing down, its rhythms matching your own breathing, which grows deeper now, and slower. Each breath is a soft tide, pulling you further away from the waking world, further from the story and its sorrows. Let the image of the old abbot fade. Let the scent of the candles and the chill of the stone melt away into the simple. Present reality of your own comfortable bed. Feel the weight of your own blanket, the softness of your pillow. There are no more bells to answer, no more duties to perform. The long, dark night is a sanctuary, a quiet, empty church waiting just for you. The only task left is to let go, to release the day, to release the story, and to allow yourself to drift into the deep, quiet and dreamless peace that you have earned. Let the silence hold you. Let the darkness comfort you. Rest now.